I'm who you wanted. I think it's me.
I don't know what you're doing. In my way. Send out the angel now, or everyone in the bookshop gets it. I mean it.
Hi. Listen. The angel Gabriel is apparently me. But I'm also Jim, which is short for James, but also Gabriel.
Will you shut up? Get back in there right now, this minute, and you tell that ass, Aziraphale, and that arch-traitor Curly, that they sent out the angel Gabriel now. Toast! T-O-S-T! E! Toast! Now.
What happened?
They told me to come back and tell you to send out the angel.
Oh, of course they did. There, we do a miracle, make sure nobody knows it's him. Now nobody knows it's him. Nice one, us.
Excuse me. Happy, 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 happy.
Right, so, the plan.
Hello, hello, hello. You have found the making of video, podcasts, unauthorized TED Talk, rambling meta. What is the making of? Well, the making of is me talking about my process or thoughts around making specific artworks. It's going to be different every time. And when I'm talking about film and TV, just a heads up, I'm going to really try to use the gender of the actors unless specified in the text movie that the characters have specific gender. This week, in episode 2, what am I still thinking about? That's right, Good Omens. And here's a moment for you to recognize major spoilers. So, if you haven't seen Good Omens, buzz off. Because it'll ruin season 2 for you, and I'm not cool with that. So, please respect my boundaries.
Vavoom.
Vavoom.
That's the plan. No.
I just finished working through the character of Jim, short for James, short for Gabriel, sometimes the Archangel, Gabriel. And I honestly did not expect to find so much to think about. It was really delightful to open what I thought was an empty box and find a whole story in there. The gateway to everything for me was this moment with Diva Jim. In which I became obsessed with turning him into a disco track. And it was this moment and needing to ABBA it up that led to making the music video. In fact, I made 3 versions of the music video because it turns out that the pacing of Lay All Your Love on Me is so consistent in all of the versions that I looked at. Like every single cover, it was so amazing. That I was just able to swap the song out without changing the video at all. You know, how cool is that? for the music video, I started by setting up the intro, and then I cut the first verse of the song because, well, A, it was a lot more difficult to get the HD footage for all of the moments that I wanted, so I needed a shorter song. B, I didn't think the lyrics of the first verse really fit, and it was easy to make the cut without it being noticeable in the music. And for the song, I went with the metal version because, let's be honest, if you're going to have a heaven hell running away together story and you're telling the story of an angel who has a fly climb into his brain through the middle of his eye, which I'm pretty sure I've seen in some horror movies, so you can remember who he is. It's definitely not a pure light and love scenario. And I chose Lay All Your Love specifically because Gabriel needed something operatic and angelic as his. Thinking about Gabriel ended up opening a whole can of worms, like a lot of buzzing thoughts. And it's really amazing to me how much lives through this character. So as I mentioned, what kicked it off was I'm just a wee bit obsessed with Disco Jim here because it's such a big diva energy moment. It has all the shades of Drag Race Superstar. And I am here for it. It's just so endearing because you can take the memories, you can erase the sense of entitlement, being the most powerful being in heaven, the need to go to war, even the memory of the war.
So, with one act of treason, you averted the war.
Well, I think the greater good...
Don't talk to me about the greater good, sunshine. I'm the Archangel fucking Gabriel.
You can get rid of the really gorgeous suits and the entire internal knowledge base and reduce an angel to being a divorced dad wearing secondhand clothes, living with his parents again, who has the comprehension of a small child. And given half a second, he's still going to be the Archangel Gabriel. I mean, look at the walk. This is just clearly a part of his core personality. So, because this was such a delight for me, and I had so much fun, I did a few versions of this with the different versions of Lay All Your Love, and I've attached a link. Enjoy responsibly and have fun. So the concept I want to talk about this time around is the Ineffable Bureaucracy, which I've learned I can't spell. And it does not matter. It's just not on.
I mean, it's not on!
It does not matter how many times I try to type it, I cannot spell bureaucracy, which actually makes sense because of my personal feelings about the state of bureaucracy and bureaucracies of all shapes and sizes. There are two types of relationships that are described in Good Omens. There's the Ineffable Husbands. This is the non-binary romance, which comes from the idea of the ineffable plan, how it relates to the angel Aziraphale and the demon Crowley.
Long story, no time.
Well, try me.
Okay. So, in the beginning, in the garden, there was, he was a wily old serpent, and I was technically on apple tree duty.
They love each other. They have for thousands of years, since the beginning of creation, but they're technically enemies, and they can't express themselves under pain of torture, death, because of the consequences of being caught consorting with the enemy. So they have a whole unspoken subtext that involves speaking in code, where they say one thing but do another.
Crowley, I've told you, I'm not helping you. I'm not interested. This is purely social. I am an angel. You are a demon. We're hereditary enemies. Get thee behind me, foul fiend. After you.
And nothing is spoken overtly, and they behave in all ways at the same time as if they're married and have been forever. And they're also totally in denial to the world about their feelings. Well, Aziraphale definitely is in denial about his feelings for a lot of this. So everyone knows that they're together, except the husbands haven't spoken about it or normalized it for themselves because to them it's an impossible dream.
You know what it's like when you don't know anything at all, and yet you're totally certain that everything would be better if you were just near one particular person? No. Well, certainly not.
And so a million fanfics were launched into the ocean, and they were all modeled after the original ship. Also, leading to a lot of fanfics about Ineffable Husbands.
They seem quite passionate, those fans.
Oh, they're very passionate.
Yeah.
Absolutely. There's a lot of fan fiction going on out there, which is very passionate fan fiction. Now, for a long time, people were a bit weird about fan fiction, and people sort of look down on fan fiction. This is when fans of a show start writing their own stories based on the characters and the plot.
It goes gay so fast.
It does go gay very quickly. But it's kind of amazing. I think it's a fantastic thing. The fact that people sort of were a bit weird about it, I think is wrong. It's such a love of the show, and it shows such commitment to it. I think it's wonderful. I mean, it does involve, on Good Omens, me and David Tennant having sex, mainly. Twilight fan fiction involved me having sex with other people. There's a lot of that going on, yeah.
Which apparently Michael Sheen is reading, guys. So good job. Stay spicy.
Yes, fan fiction that's quite...
Oh, I see. Well, that's not for us to read.
Oh, I read it all.
Oh, you should. You're writing most of it.
I write most of it.
I mean, I personally love the idea of people, so many people, being in love with the idea of them in love and telling stories about it in all different forms. I think we all need more love in the world and more imagination, and this is a beautiful way of doing that.
Young man, you were put on this earth for one reason and one reason only, to end it. You're a disobedient little brat, and I hope someone tells your father.
Oh, they will. And your father will not be pleased.
So then there's the Ineffable Bureaucracy, which is another non-binary romance where you have two characters of equal, very high status who fall in love over a very short period of time and then give up everything and move in together. Their romance, by contrast, happens, feels like overnight because it only takes a few years. You have the Archangel of Heaven, Gabriel, and then you have leader of the forces of hell, Beelzebub. And they need to negotiate next steps after Armageddon is canceled and they fall in love, which leads Gabriel to refuse to approve the second coming.
Anyway, Armageddon, the sequel, that's a nah.
So Gabriel refused point blank to entertain another Armageddon. Doesn't sound like him at all. Any idea why not?
Not yet. They had a sort of trial.
It was a real trial. It didn't take long, though.
And he ditches his high-profile job, hides his memories, and goes on the run to avoid the consequences of that choice, ending up with Aziraphale and Crowley at the bookshop. And this leads him to stealing the romantic ending that we wanted for our husbands and running off with Beelzebub after he has his memories restored at the end of the season. Told you, spoilers. It's a cute plot, and on first watch, for all of season 2, we don't know about the romance. So when it happens, it does feel like a strange kind of wrapper to the whole season, and it's hard not to both think it's cute and also be super aggravated at how things play out and wondering at why it was structured the way it was. And from a queer perspective, it has actually been pointed out by a few people, really interestingly. This may illustrate the difference between younger and older generations. And this is such an amazing idea. I'm not sure where the original idea comes from. I'd really like to credit back. So if you're listening to this and you know, or you were someone who came up with this idea initially, I would love to link back to you and the original post about this. But the idea is this. So the husbands have lived through most of their lives being unable to publicly be in love because of the risk of death, great danger. So then you have Gabriel and Beelzebub who fall in love in the post-apocalyptic world. Things have changed and they have at least one set of role models, husbands to follow. So it seems effortless by comparison and fast. I think this is just such an amazing point, you know, about how the world can change, but it can be difficult to change the habits of a lifetime even so. And certainly I can relate to this because being queer wasn't even an option for me until I was an adult. And even then, it's taken a long time to really understand my own queerness.
So, you don't know who you are?
Oh, yes.
Ah.
I'm me. I just don't know who me is.
I see.
But you know me. You recognize me.
Well, I know someone who looks like you.
That's probably me then. I think that's one of the main ways you can tell.
And when I was working on music video and content, and I was looking at Jim and his character, I thought a lot about identity. You know, who are we without our history, without the weight of our choices? And this triggered a whole, what does my queer identity mean to me? You know, something about Good Omens this past season just really resonated with me. I didn't have any gay icons growing up. I lived in a really straight culture, and it took a long time to find myself and to connect with those aspects of myself and understand them. And when I was first experimenting and trying, you know, to understand my sexuality, the experience I was having were actually weaponized against me. I was shamed for it. I was outed to my family, and I was lectured about being a bad influence. Honestly, having a parent know things about your sex life you haven't volunteered with them and being lectured about it is probably one of the most mortifying experiences. And I'm still not sure why I didn't discorporate. I think I just internalized the idea that exploring who I was shameful, offensive, hurtful to others, and inappropriate. That I needed to keep that part of me quiet and be careful and not share with others. And I feel like there are so many better ways of understanding and better words, perhaps now. I don't know, it's a really personal thing. It's hard for me to talk about because even now, even in the culture we live in now, a part of me feels like if I talk about this, I'll get it wrong again. I won't be queer enough. I'll describe things the wrong way. I'll upset someone just trying to share how I feel and what my experience is. That what I feel and think is offensive and that I should just be quiet. And as usual, at least in the last little while, I've decided because it makes me uncomfortable, I need to talk about this and do it anyway. I mean, I've always identified as bisexual, but always felt it wasn't the right word, wasn't enough. I've never felt like I fit into any box of gender. You know, female and woman, okay. I'm married to a man and I'm identified as a woman generally. And I'm okay with that generally because being a woman is part of who I am, but it's not all of me. And there are significant times in my life, all the time, where I do not feel like a woman and where I identify as male and being a man, or just not either, somewhere in between. I've always felt like a chameleon. And knowing this about myself has changed nothing for me as a person because it's always been true. I never felt I needed to change any aspect of myself, but I've also been really quiet about it because I haven't felt like I had anything relevant to offer. I just love people. I'm attracted to people for their souls. Gender isn't really a thing I've ever worried about. I go to Pride. I support the people that I love who are trans, who are gay. I do work in the background because it's important, especially right now. You know, speaking for myself here only, of course, I think if you need to make changes, you should. I just never felt that way about myself. It was more that I was frustrated because there wasn't a box that I really fit into to describe myself other than being me. And having to either settle and accept status quo or bend like a pretzel. It's a weird reality. It's a hard thing. And I just never really wanted to do any of those things. So I went with the flow. I chose to love the people that I wanted to love and wear what I wanted and be who I was without putting a label on it. And try not to worry about how other people label me. I mean, so a long time ago, one of the highest compliments I received was from a cousin who we were visiting, and they looked at what I brought with me in my travels through Europe and said that I dress like a drag queen. And they were in love with the drag queen. Like, this was genuinely a lovely compliment. But I didn't really understand what that meant at the time. That started me watching Drag Race to understand what he meant. And fuck me, if I didn't learn so much about myself from doing that. There is 1,000% a gay man inside of me who's super outrageous, wants to wear flamboyant showgirl outfits and giant feather boas and capes with wings and big feathery coats. I mean, I genuinely have the closet for it. Plus, Jimbo is such a inspiration. I love Jimbo so much. So maybe it started with Drag Race when I binged the whole thing, a number of years ago, and that really resonated with me. But I will admit, it also made me sad because as a biological woman, I'm never going to be the right kind of drag to compete there. It doesn't matter how much this is my jam. I'm not going to make sense in that world. So it was like looking in the window of the most amazing shop and seeing all the things you like best and not being able to walk in the shop and try any of them on. And on the other hand, I'm totally okay with that. I don't need it to be for me. It's just a force of nature, and it has changed the world so much for good. I have just so much love for everyone who supports and is involved with all of this new amazing work that is being created and put out into the world. Nothing but appreciation. I just also felt some longing for a thing. I didn't realize I even wanted or needed it. And it's a weird thing to experience and realize you won't ever be able to go there. So it goes. But Omens did something really lovely to my brain, because I saw myself in a character that turned out to be gender fluid. I could connect with what it looks like and feels like from the outside looking in instead of from the inside looking out. And then, okay, so when it comes to sexuality, I'm really oblivious to people sending out romantic signals or subtext, both in real life and on TV. I always have been, and I never assume anyone could ever really be interested in me specifically that way, but I also just don't really pick up on those signals normally. And I'm sure there's a side tangent here about me being neurodivergent, and I'm just going to sidestep that right now so I can continue with my main point. Season 1 of Good Omens was amazing, but I missed all the subtext, all of it. And then season 2 was just all, oh, did you miss that? Well, okay, how about Jim and a glorious disco queen outfit? Or all those little Aziraphale touches? Or the I'm back, now I'm going to dance for you? I mean, awesomeness. And it just became so fucking obvious, and I was just swept up in the realization about it. Like, oh my fucking God, these two are in love. Like, in a totally non-platonic way. And I missed all of this. Where have I been? And I am in love with all of this. It's just so perfectly perfect. Well, allowing that to come to a head and getting to go back and rewatch the entire story, both seasons, with that new knowledge amazed me, because it's just so beautiful and subtle, and it added a whole new layer of meaning to these characters for me. Learning that the bandstand scene was in a famous bandstand for proposals, like that really is a proposal scene. It's just so gorgeous. I guess in a way I feel like I was a bit of a mirror for the characters too. I was totally oblivious, and then halfway through season 2, I started asking my husband, wait, is This is really a married vibe, huh? Like, I'm not missing this.
And then again, other people's love lives all seem so much more straightforward than our own.
Suddenly, at the end of season 2, I'm going, oh my God, of course. And the weight and the ending is just devastating. Not just because of them separating, because it sort of blows the thing wide open in my brain. Just all the possibilities. And that led me to finding the fans and the Tumblr posts and the fan fiction and all of the stories people tell. And so I've been wrapped up in this huge rethink because I am thinking about myself and coming to terms with something new, something I didn't understand before. This is why I was thinking about being queer in general. Title I never felt I really earned because I wasn't queer enough. Because I am in a straight relationship, you know, I'm committed, we're deeply in love with a straight man who loves all the parts of me. But realizing how bunk for me to think I'm not queer enough. And kind of how hilarious it is to be learning this about myself now in my life. I just never saw myself in anyone. Like maybe Bowie, but Bowie always felt more masculine. And I didn't have anyone in my life who turned me on to these kinds of stories until the amazing cousin teased me so lovingly about, I think it was a cape with wings that I had packed for my trip to Europe. Yeah. I just thought, honestly, maybe it was in my mind. And maybe all women feel a bit this way. And I just went with being bi and I let it go. So back to my original point. Omens 2 is just so queer, so gay, both in sexuality and temperament and representation and fashion sense. It's just so delightful. It was like I was finally watching a world I could live in and make sense without having to explain myself, because everyone around me would just get it and be cool with it. Like, what would that be like? This started because I was looking around doing one of those regular self-assessments I do, and I started making music videos and content about Good Omens, and it just kind of blew my mind. I was asking myself, what do I watch? What do I listen to? What do I care about? What things do I invest in? And I had an actual aha moment. And looking back, it shouldn't have been one. But it was, oh, yeah, I guess I am queer. Huh. It's a bit like suddenly stretching and realizing there's a ton of room instead of being in a little cramped box. It's just really meaningful to let this fit for me in a way it's actually hard to articulate. Mostly, I'm enjoying realizing something about myself that I have known in my brain for most of my life. But because of the ways I live in the world, I haven't felt it in my heart. I haven't believed that I could really belong to these ideas. I don't fit the picture. Even if I'm always trying my best to be me. So now I feel like I have a bit more breathing room, and there's just a quiet joy that I've been carrying around about the whole thing. A world where everyone could just be their complete selves in whatever way they need to be. No explanations needed. You know, even Crowley and Aziraphale, with all the powers and the things that happen, they don't really ever explain themselves. You know, other than in terms of how delicious the scandalous naked man triangle is, because humans are still humans, people, no matter what their orientation is. And really, after years of seeing this proper Mr. Fell, you know, have the whole Gabriel sitch with Crowley getting so mad he's just summoning lightning. I mean, of course they were going to ask. It's such a good story. But the thing about Soho in season 2 is without the gigantic world-exploding dangers, there's just something really perfect there. It's a neighborhood experience. What it's like to just live in that cozy corner of the universe and not just exist, but thrive in it. Well, and Jim in that outfit. I really want access to Aziraphale's closet, please. And I want to come back around now to the Ineffable Bureaucracy and the ending and how Gabriel literally stole the hero's ending. He didn't have to fight, really, or do anything, except for remove his memories and hide to win the love of his life. He basically snuck around behind Heaven's back for a few years with the other woman, fell in love, and then when things came to a head, filed for divorce, gave Heaven everything in the settlement and disappeared, making it impossible to trace. And also at the same time, like, he gave up everything. He was just willing to go. He was willing to fall. You know, no questions asked.
Gabriel, Supreme Archangel, you have refused to exercise your celestial authority, and you are henceforth removed from office.
I see. You're casting me down to hell.
He's a study in opposites to our other pair. I mean, if you compare the relationship in actions, Crowley and Aziraphale have had to restrain themselves. You know, this is a very Victorian kind of romance, which I love. And you see in all of their interactions, the minute gestures, the ways they convey their feelings through their expressions and their big eyes and the subtle touches and the careful choices. You know, whereas Gabriel just lets it all hang out. There isn't any restraint, really, in his actions. So I guess the question is, there's such a huge contrast. Why does Gabriel get a happy ending? Well, I think there's a few things happening. He literally does a walk of shame. You know, his sin is pride. This is brought up in the first season around him in his tailored suits and the way he behaves, and he's very arrogant. But he gives up everything. His identity, his memories, his outfits, his position. I mean, he basically divorces Heaven, walks naked through the town square with just a box. I mean, this is the divorced husband story arc, guys. So he humbles himself. He moves back in with his family / metaphorical parents. He wears secondhand clothes. You know, he loses the flashy lifestyle, all the benefits. He gets his life for the person that he loves.
I remember when the morning stars sang together and all the angels of God shouted for joy.
Yes. Oh, yes. Yes. That's right.
No.
Keep going.
I can't.
She can.
I can't. I can't. I can't remember those things. My head isn't big enough. Not anymore.
Yes, I see. I'm sorry, Jim. But you've done awfully well. Have a rest now.
So he's humbling himself, and season 2 really sets up that a character can be redeemed. Well, except the meta trash. Except the meta trash. Except the fucking meta trash. So we saw him as a villain, Gabriel, in season 1. But he had 6 episodes to redeem himself. So I guess the question is, are we going to have to wait 6 episodes for Aziraphale to redeem himself?
Good news, Jim. Nobody's going to notice you. You're safe here. For now.
While we figure out what's actually going on.
I think I know what's going on.
What?
I don't go to the outside. And now, I have 2 friends.
We get to see what Gabriel's like without all of the established identity. And at his core, as a being, he's adorable. Even Crowley learns to befriend him. You know, we see him offer himself up to the enemy to save everyone in the bookshop. We see he has the most fabulous taste in clothes. And without that weight of knowledge, he also doesn't disdain others or humans. He's very literal and sweet and an innocent person who really doesn't understand a lot about how the world works, which is something that was there underneath the cynicism and sort of the ego in season 1, but also there was a constant desire, at least I had, to want to smack his smug, judgmental face, metaphorically. You know, Jim shows us what it's like getting divorced from heaven. Aziraphale. He misses the memo, Aziraphale, because I think he doesn't know what to look for. I think a good example of this is he goes on his adventure with the record, the financiers. But in the end, it's actually Crowley who finds the actual answer to the question of where Gabriel's memories have gone. And this brings me to my final point. The Metatron is a dick. I know, obviously, right? In season 1, Gabriel was the replacement, literally, for Metatrash as the bad guy. In the books, it's actually the Metatron, not Gabriel. So they brought Gabriel's character in, and so he's actually taken on that role. So once he steps away from heaven, he can have a redemption arc, and then the Metatrash steps out and from behind where he's hiding, essentially, to become the villain again. Gabriel is a representative in season 1. He's always just doing his job, right? He has that attitude about it. And when he leaves, then the actual face behind the screen appears. So yeah, I would say the Metatrash is Oz. I mean, he's even a giant floating head. Okay, we can unpack that later, but really, I mean, it seems pretty clear to me. And Metatrash links Crowley and Gabriel in 2 different ways. He says,
"You are not going to hell. For one prince of heaven to be cast into the outer darkness makes a good story. For it to happen twice makes it look like there is some kind of institutional problem."
The first, past history. So one prince of heaven has already fallen. So this could be a reference to Crowley. I think the fact Gaiman has sort of commented on this, but in terms of how the sequencing is set up, I mean, you do see right before this is said that Crowley has all this power and he's capable of accessing files of a quite high classified level. So there's a suggestion right there that he is one of the princes of heaven, possibly. And I could do a whole side post on this, and I will talk about this in another video. But I mean, we can just know that Crowley is incredibly powerful. He has an amazing breadth of powers, just as Aziraphale actually does. So there is a direct connection between Gabriel and Crowley. If Crowley is the one being referenced as falling and Gabriel is the second one, they've been connected. And then the second thing is, when you look at present events and dangerous precedents, having Gabriel and Beelzebub fall in love and run away, again, if it's just them, it's a good story. But if it happens again, it's an institutional problem. So, you know, having Aziraphale and Crowley get together after this has happened must be stopped at all costs. So Gabriel still has the happy ending and he vanishes, but part of why he's able to do that because of the lack of attachment. He's divorced from heaven, whereas Aziraphale is obviously still very much in that relationship.
You've been together long?
Who?
You and your partner?
Oh, no, it's not like that.
It certainly looks like that from here. Oh, so you've just recently hooked up?
No,
you got a husband or a boyfriend? Does the book tell you a bit on the side?
He's not a bit on the side. Far too pure of heart to be anybody's bit on the side.
The thing that makes me most sad about this clip, and it's so ironic, Crowley's been confronted. At several points in season 2, he is confronted by people, and the person who actually needs to hear the message is Aziraphale, not him. Crowley is essentially Aziraphale's side piece. Hey, I mean, please don't send hate my way. I love Aziraphale. Don't throw shade my way. But like, if you can say it's not true, but just, he's not too pure of heart, guys, to keep Crowley hanging on. And then when the original spouse comes back, like, hey, I'm sorry. I thought maybe we could all just live together. I mean, that's just not husbandly. I had an ex who wanted to have that lifestyle, and honestly, it was just...
It's not on!
Not because I have anything against the lifestyle. I had tried it, and it really wasn't for me. At the same time, I want to make another point about their relationship, about the husbands. Beelzebub and Gabriel, in the bureaucracy, running away together, actually proves that given enough time and exposure to Aziraphale and Crowley together, people are impacted, and not just by the miracles that they do, but I mean, has anyone else noticed that everyone pairs off if they spend enough time around them when they're together? I mean, Gabriel and Beelzebub are fine, and then they hang out with them together when Armageddon is called off, and then it's after that point. And there's a number of characters like that where they've spent time with one or the other, but as soon as they're together, it shifts and changes the dynamics. People surround them, and they end up in relationships specifically with their polar opposites. I feel like Aziraphale and Crowley's slow burn romance might be creating some sort of warp field of love that everyone gets sucked into. You know, or maybe it's just that they are 100% clueless, but everyone around them sees them as an example of ideal love and relationship, and so they choose or want to fall in love in similar ways. And I guess that's one of the things we saw in season 2. And even in season 1, when you look back at it. But I guess my question is, like, what happens when Crowley and Aziraphale are unhappy? Like, deeply, deeply unhappy and apart. I think in season 3, we're going to find out. We're going to get to find out who they are as individuals. And hopefully, get to see them as much together as possible on screen. I mean, thanks so much for tuning in. I can't wait to talk to you guys again soon. And I put together, as always, a meditation that is to help deal with aggravating bureaucratic nightmares and feel more angelic. So if you are interested in doing a little meditating with me, learning something new, just stay tuned and listen on for the next episode. Hope you're making amazing things wherever you are, whatever you're doing. Happy creation. Hey guys, so it's that time in the video, and I would rather set my own hair on fire than promote my own stuff or ask for help. So if you could like, click, subscribe, any of the great things, that would give me a little positive reinforcement, help me shift those negative thoughts.